Hi, I'm Whitney Espich, the CEO of the MIT Alumni Association, and I hope you enjoy this digital production created for alumni and friends like you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rick Lufkin, chair of MIT's Cardinal and Gray Society, thus the spiffy red jacket that you've seen me in before. Just remember, you too could wear your red jacket at these affairs. Regretfully, however, I can't see you. I can't see any of you, but I'm very pleased to see you there. Today's program builds off yesterday's inaugural Alumni Forum program, the main stage presentation, which was Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Today, we're going to have a follow-on program to explore some of the specifics of how the MIT Entrepreneurial Educational Engine, if I might use the term, works from the inside. Three of the people who make the entrepreneurial ecosystem work at MIT today will constitute our panelists. They each will speak to the specifics of their organizations, and together we will, as a panel, explore how these elements complement each other to provide today's students with the tools, both intellectual, academic, and also psychological, emotional, to found and to lead the companies of tomorrow. Please note that we will be responsive to both during and after the formal presentations to questions that you may choose to ask. Please enter them into the Q&A box on screen whenever they occur to you, and we will endeavor to answer all of them. As you will have seen in the promotional material for this afternoon's panel, our panelists are an extraordinary group, each of them successful entrepreneurs in their own right. So they truly bring credentialed experience to this. I will very briefly introduce each to frame their roles. Bill Aulet leads the development of entrepreneurship education across the Institute as the managing director of the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship and the professor of the practice at the MIT Sloan School of Management. Bill is an award-winning educator and author whose current work is built off the foundation of his 25-year successful career at IBM and is three-time serial entrepreneur. He is changing the way entrepreneurship is understood, taught, and practiced around the world. Jinane Abounadi brings a unique combination of experiences from academic research to senior operational and strategic roles in startup companies and large businesses to her current work as executive director of the MIT Sandbox Innovation Fund program, which she founded herself in 2016. She has held leadership roles in two of the most successful local Boston area startups, ITA Software and Kayak, and run a global portfolio of third-party products for Travelport, giving her the opportunity to establish partnerships with companies across the globe and to advise and evaluate a number of startups in the travel sector. The focus of Don Shobrys' career has been helping organizations make decisions quickly and more effectively. Originally at Exxon and then at Chesapeake Decision Sciences, he is a pioneer in developing analytical tools for supply chain management. In that role, he worked with over 100 Fortune 1000 companies in North America and Europe and ran Chesapeake's operations prior to the sale of the company. He has served MIT in many roles, notably as past president of the Alumni Association, past chair of the MIT Alumni Fund Board, and now as co-director of the MIT Venture Mentoring Services. Our first speaker is scheduled to be Bill Aulet of the Martin Trust Center. Bill has, I believe, signed on. And Bill, I'm going to pass the virtual baton over to you. You're now on screen.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be on here with my colleagues from the Venture Mentoring Service, Don and Jinane. It's great to see you. I wish we could be in person, and we're getting close, everybody. We're getting close. What I want to talk about is one part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. That's the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship. And I've got some slides that I just want to share, and then we'll pass it over, and hopefully it will stimulate some kind of discussion here. But congratulations to all of you for being members of the Cardinal and Gray Society. We always see you guys walking around at graduation, and you're such a lovable group. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Martin Trust Center, and what our part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem is education. We believe, and we have data to back this up, that entrepreneurship can and should be taught, and that people can learn it. And we're seeing the results from that being very positive, especially in the MIT environment, where there's so much to support it. And we believe that it's imperative that this be taught not just to some of the students who want to do startups, but to all of the students. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So our mission, it fits in very nicely with the overall mission of MIT. We're looking to create the next generation of innovation-driven entrepreneurs. And our customer, we're an entrepreneurial organization, and our customer is the MIT student. And we can talk about that a bit more if people are interested. But we seek to provide frameworks, courses, co-curricular, extracurricular, state-of-the-art facilities and processes to teach entrepreneurship in a rigorous but also relevant way. So we combine the men's of academia, the rigor, with the relevance of Monis to create the next generation of innovation-driven entrepreneurs. And our materials are used with hundreds of schools around the world, and we give them away, as I'll talk about. We have very clear values that we share with our colleagues here at VMS and Sandbox. And I'll just point you to one honest broker. We do not allow anyone here to take a financial interest in any student. We believe you're either an educator or an investor. And we will not, if given stock, we will not take it. If asked to invest, we say we invest in everyone. We can't take a piece of your company because then we have financial incentives. That's a conflict of interest. We are focused strictly on teaching our students how to fish. We are not focused on the fish itself. If we teach them how to fish, then they will become successful entrepreneurs in startups and other places. But we are not focused on the fish. And I think that's very, very important. Sometimes we'll even say, you know, that fish is ugly. You really need to move on, and tell them that they need to move on, and that we'll have a very open discussion with them. Or you're not ready now to fish alone. You need to go work in a company and pick up this set of skills. The foundation of how we teach entrepreneurship is based in the 4H kind of guidelines or principles or pillars, whatever you want to call it. The first is the entrepreneurial mindset. And this is rich at MIT, and we want to make sure that we keep it alive. And that starts with the heart, the first stage. How do we get people to look at, if all the fish are swimming this way, they not only are willing to swim that way, they like to swim that way. We at MIT call that hacking the system. We're not happy with the status quo just as it is. We want to make it better. And that's the spirit of a pirate that we talk about. We constantly talk about, we want you to have the spirit of a pirate in the sense that you're willing to hack the system to make it better. So, but once you have the spirit to want to be an entrepreneur, to want to make the world better, that's not enough. That's just the starting point. Then you have to be able to understand, what do you do when you go into this battle? And that is the head, that's the knowledge. And we have a robust set of a material to teach people the first principles of how to be a successful entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is not a science. It is not like programming or math or other things where it's just a problem set to be done and you get the right answer. It is not that, nor is it art, which is some kind of hard to understand thing. It's a craft where there are first principles that if you apply those, they dramatically improve your odds of succeeding. And so we're getting those first principles and testing those with academics and other rigorous that we have evidence-based approaches. And then we bring them together in a toolbox that people can use. And I think that's incredibly important. And it's an open system. It's not just stuff that we invent. But that's the knowledge that you need. The knowledge of how to increase your odds of being successful that are applicable pretty much across industries. But then there's specialization in the industries, which we can talk about. There are additional second principles there. But the knowledge is not enough. The heart and the head, I want to do it. That's the mindset. I know what to do. you have to be able to do it. And that's the hands, that's the manas part. How do you put this first principles into action? And entrepreneurship is not, again, a theoretical exercise. It's a craft that must be learned through apprenticeship. And this is what we all believe so deeply, and we provide the opportunities. We should provide those first principles, but you have to go from theory to practice over and over again. And the last thing I just want to mention is the last stage, which is very important. And one of the reasons, again, why MIT is so successful is entrepreneurship has been described by Howard Stevenson at Harvard as the pursuit of opportunities with resources beyond your control. This is really important, and it's subtle, but it's never been more obvious than recently in the COVID pandemic. When I worked at IBM when I first came out of college, and you were taught command, control, and conquer. That's general management principles. How do we kind of command, control, and conquer things? In entrepreneurship, we're working with resources that we don't control, as I just talked about. And that creates a community. The things that you want to get done, I'll call up Jinane and ask her for help. I'll call up Sherwin and Don and ask for their help, and we will all help each other out. This community approach is a dispersed approach, not a tops-down approach, not a command control approach, but a distributed approach that you don't have to own the resources. But what it does, it's not just more efficient when it goes, it's faster, that you can move around and you can adapt to situations very quickly. And so these are the pillars that we go through, and to teach people how to be entrepreneurs. But entrepreneurs can exist in places beyond startups. Startups are a very good place to study all this, but we need entrepreneurs who exist in big organizations, who exist in academia, who exist in, government, and ubiquitous throughout society. So when we bring them into the classroom, we're not just, again, looking for people like Mariana who are ready to go and found a company. Our biggest group of people who come into our classes are exploring entrepreneurship. We just had an event here today, and there are dozens of people who are like, I'm here at MIT, I want to learn about entrepreneurship before I make a decision. That's very important. That is a critical persona for us to educate, so they make a decision. Do they want to start a company? Or, as you see, the RTG ready to go -1, do they want to join a startup? Or do they want to join a big company? Or do they want to become an entrepreneurship amplifier? That is, build environments where entrepreneurs can thrive, be it in regions, geographic regions, be it inside corporations, be it inside universities. So all these are different types of personas, but then we also have some other ones too, like people like Bob Langer, who our students want to be like Bob. They want to stay in academia and start a bunch of companies. We have people like Paul Singh who want to become investors. We have people who want to do what's called entrepreneurship through acquisition, ETA, like Sam. They buy a company and they turn it around with entrepreneurial skills. We have people who want to do it while they're working at Google or elsewhere, taking a class project. That's a side hustle. And some people who just want to apply it to their personal lives, like Amanda Von Getz. All of these people are our customers. And while we started with the ready-to-go entrepreneur, we're finding this 4H kind of learning apply to all of them. So just to kind of try to wrap up in the time I have, this is the entrepreneurial journey. We always talk about the customer journey with ours. Here's the customer journey for us. They start the year at T=0. They're inspired. They have an idea. They have a technology. We have a whole series of events at MIT, and we work collaboratively with them in that distributed fashion. And then they explore it through workshops or something more. They get a small grant from Sandbox. We work with them. There's hackathon or something else. Then they get deeper into it with classes that are full semester, half a semester. And then they'll enter things like the 100K competition or the next level of Sandbox. And they will iterate through this. And then ultimately, the capstone is this program called Delta V. And they say, why do you call it Delta V? Because calling it Delta VDT seemed too long. The derivative of velocity is acceleration. And what we try to do, I can say unequivocally in this, is get student teams who want to explore this, and over the 90 days over the summer, they get to escape velocity here. We teach them to be able to how to do this in a fully immersive environment. And just to give you a sense of this, the companies that come out of Delta V are doing extraordinarily well. And if you measure them by success being they're in business 5 years later, which I think is a very limited measurement of success, we're seeing 75% of them are doing that. So is the system working? It works. And it works better every year because we repeat this process every year. So there's a cadence to it. We start the year over, and then they go up this ramp again. So students are at the center of everything we do. We have a very structured kind of entrepreneurship offerings with dozens and dozens of classes. And we have a heck of a lot of fun here with a lot of programs because we want our students to have the spirit of a pirate, but also the execution skills of a Navy SEAL. We have real entrepreneurs here. We have what we call entrepreneurs in residence, people who have started companies, missed payroll, had to fire co-founders or other people, had products that worked and didn't work and had to get it. And we make them available in an infrastructure that we have which encourages serendipitous collisions. We also provide all the food groups that you need through ramen noodles and caffeine. And we have an online app to help guide them through this, to get resources, help from anywhere on campus at any time. Well, we don't answer it at 3 o'clock in the night, but they can put it in there. And we have a whole bunch of people who can plug in, maybe many like you, and we connect every day with the tenured faculty to bring both the rigor and the relevance. So a lot of outreach. We have books that you probably heard about and other content. We've won tons of awards. We're so proud of that with all of our colleagues here. And we're really good at this stuff, entrepreneurship. I think you know that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Rick. My goodness, Rick, what is that? Your high school prom picture you got there?
Close enough. Close enough. Bill, one question I would throw at you right now to get started is that about 20 years ago, when entrepreneurial activity first got broadly into the public sphere, corporate America responded with a new buzzword: entrepreneurship. I haven't heard that word in a while. Whatever happened to entrepreneurship, and do you have any formal connections with large formal corporations, or do you really focus on the true startups?
No, we focus on, we don't like to call it entrepreneurship. We like to call it corporate entrepreneurship. And people thought when we have a class on corporate entrepreneurship, and people thought that was an oxymoron. It can't be an oxymoron, just to be clear. Corporations, the thing is, this is an MIT thing. Startups don't have a lot of inertia. Big corporations have a lot of inertia. And the key thing to innovating and being entrepreneurial is clock speed. And the question is, how do you get big corporations to have fast clock speed? Because you've got to be able to come up with hypotheses, test those hypotheses, and move very quickly. And there's a great movie called Silicon Cowboys, which I'm the bad guy in it, but it was all about how IBM lost the computer industry, which people might remember out here. And that was all about clock speed. So we absolutely, and let me just say, not only do we do that, it's imperative for us as a society, because startups will only get the low-hanging fruit in society. If we want to address climate change, if we want to address healthcare, if we want to address education problems, if we want to energy, we need to get people who have big balance sheets and have a longer time horizon than just 5 years, and then I need to sell out and we need to go public via SPAC or whatever and get out. We need big balance sheets, long time horizons, people who can own a $1 trillion grid to be able to solve these problems. So, but I will be quiet to give my colleagues time, because I'm Irish and I could talk all day.
Thank you, Bill.
Moroccans are much more to the point.
Jinane, I'm passing the baton to you. You're on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me make sure I can actually share my screen. Okay, you don't want to see that. Okay. Oh, shoot. Sorry. I had my presentation already and it's gone. Sorry about that.
Let me just say that while buying Jinane time, the Sandbox Innovation Fund has been something that's new that come to campus, and it's very, very innovative and being imitated elsewhere around the world. Well, VMS and Trust Center have been around. And it's really exciting, and the students absolutely love it working in conjunction. So it's a good example of the kind of bottoms-up approach that's happening here, that happens and succeeds at MIT. You found it, Jinane?
That is absolutely correct. And as we say that, I lost my presentation, so I'm going to look for it. So maybe.
All right, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Just tell me when you're ready.
I will. It was all ready. So 1 second.
So there's a great book that just came out. I get no financial benefit for this. It's called From the Basement to the Dome by Jean-Jacques de Groot. And it says how MIT's unique culture created a thriving entrepreneurial community. And if you leave one thing, we just had him speak here at the center today, it's MIT is great at entrepreneurship because it's bottoms up as opposed to tops down. When you look, and there's a great book called Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Josh Lerner at Harvard. He talks about how all these people try to do it from top down fail. And what made MIT great is these kind of bottoms up experiments like the Rad Lab. All right.
Okay,
and this is a great one. Jinane?
Okay, thank you very much. You're a very hard act to follow, Bill. So I hope you'll enjoy this presentation. I'm Jinane Abounadi, and I'm a class of 98 as a PhD in EACS, which seems like it was a very long time ago. But I'm so excited to be here as I share with you my journey as the founding executive director of the Sandbox Innovation Fund. I'll give you a quick overview. We'll talk about why Sandbox, why it was launched about 5.5 years ago, how it really complements the existing ecosystem, especially the Martin Trust Center, VMS. And then we'll talk a little bit about the student experience and finally the impact that Sandbox has had on campus in this short time. So this program was launched in 2016, and it was actually the vision of it came about because of conversations with students and the wider ecosystem about the fact that MIT was such a rich ecosystem, but students felt that they didn't really get the support they needed. So a few students went to the School of Engineering, and Dean Waits at the time worked alongside with the entire community to come up with this idea of providing, in addition to all the classes and all the programs that are at the Martin Trust Center at school and at Sloan, is to provide funding. And this was a key point, and provide funding to students, to any student who has an idea and who wants to learn about entrepreneurship, not necessarily wants to start a company, it's really learning about entrepreneurship. And the funding starts at $1,000, and then we give funding all the way to $25,000. And the $1,000 level is what Bill referred to. This is the moment to explore. So think about that. We're giving students $1,000 to explore, to learn about the principles of entrepreneurship, but more than that is to learn about themselves, to learn, in addition to everything they learn about at school, is learn about themselves and what it is within them that's going to either have them consider a career as an entrepreneur immediately when they graduate, or potentially way later after they gain some additional industry experience, or maybe, and actually a lot of this builds on what Bill has already talked about. Some of them may say, actually, I want to be an academic. I want to actually go to business school. I want to go to medical school. And all of that is totally fine. So our job here is not to spin out startups. It's really to teach students about entrepreneurship. And so if we come down to it, at my time when I was a student here, there was the most important pieces of the education. And I was here as a graduate student. I went to Caltech as an undergraduate, and it wasn't any different. There were really two pieces of education that were important. One of them is the classroom education, what you learned in the classroom. The next one was research. which, in MIT's terms, Europe was an incredibly successful program, making sure that every student has an opportunity to learn about research. And then in the past, I think 5 to 10 years, this idea that entrepreneurship itself as a discipline is another important pillar that we need to make sure that that our students learn about. And I won't go into all of the details here, but I'll just have you take a look at the top lines. When you're talking about education, the most important person is your professor, your instructor, because they're teaching you material that they've carefully put together, and you go and learn it. And then the way you test out is you kind of go to the library, you study, and you get your A. Research, the most important person in your research is your research advisor. And the way you actually impress your research advisor is by spending a lot of time in the lab and by making sure that you impress your peers, and your work is typically evaluated through peer review. Innovation and entrepreneurship is actually totally different. The people that become really important for you are mentors, and this becomes really critical. And the way you actually learn is by failing and learning and pivoting and adapting. So you learn a lot of resilience, because when you do something innovative, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So you take guesses and you go out and test and so on. So it's a different type of learning. And then you learn, actually, you need to spend time with your customers. You need to understand who your customers are. You need to understand the market, the size of the market, and so on and so on. So I think increasingly the belief here is that an MIT education, to be complete, you really need to have all of these 3 components that are part of the entire MIT education, whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student. And so Sandbox, I think, came about in order to make sure that we have a way to encourage students through the funding, the $1,000 funding, to encourage them to come in and explore. And once they start exploring, then they find out what it is that they need to learn, and they go out and actually take classes and take advantage of all the wider ecosystem. For us, it's really important to stay very much in lockstep with the academic calendar. So we run a program, a cohort in the fall, one in the spring and one in the summer. And then in the summer, we have actually plenty of flexibility to be able to accommodate students that may be doing internships, or students that are full-time, and even students that are in Delta V. And we have a core number of students that are also in Delta V. As the teams progress, as I said, we start with this $1,000 level, and we say, when we give you that first $1,000, we're really not judging your idea or its potential. We're just giving you an opportunity to learn. And some of our best teams started at the $1,000 level. As teams progress, then they get access to additional funding up to $25,000. And some of them will get that and then go into Delta V, or will go into Delta V and come back and get that money so they can actually start prototyping and figuring out how to get some pilots and test out their ideas in the market. And the focus is always on learning and experimenting and growing as individuals. It takes a lot to support a program like Sandbox. We have an amazing number of mentors, most of whom are alumni. We also have a fellows program where we train graduate students and postdocs to learn how to become mentors. We have an amazing group of expert advisors that are giving expert advice on a weekly basis. And our office hours literally kind of fill up as soon as we put them up. And the expert advisors are people that are educators in the setting, and they're educators in a way that's different from regular faculty education, because they're here, the students come in and say, I want to learn about this. I want to learn about this particular IP law or regulation law or anything that's very specific to the idea that they're working on. So that's actually a very effective way of teaching students from practitioners in a way that's more of a pull education than a push education. And we have a small amount of staff that works very hard, extremely dedicated. And of course, our incredible partnerships with VMS, with Martin Trust Center, and with a lot of other programs on campus is what makes it happen. We cannot do this all of ourselves. We can't do it in vacuum. And we have a bunch of external partnerships. I just want to emphasize this bit here, as I know this group really values the academic experience at MIT, and we do as well. Here, people here are for their academics and their research. That's the priority. And MIT education is so valuable that if you come to any of us, and if any student comes and says, I want to drop out and I want to go to my startup, I think, and Bill will agree with me here, our advice is do not. Your MIT education is so important. Don't throw it away. And that's what enables you to distinguish yourself from any other entrepreneur out there. It's these skills, these rigorous, hard skills that allow you to solve problems that other people can't solve. This ability to solve complex problems that's so unique to MIT that we want to make sure we emphasize all the time. And we want to make sure that our students take advantage of the hard, rigorous education that they get here, or the research and the innovation that comes from doing research in labs. And then, of course, part of it is educating graduate students about IP and ownership and licensing and so on. And, you know, I was a graduate student here. I had no idea about any of these things. So, and I learned a lot of it when I went off and worked in industry, in startups, or with my own startup. But here we have an opportunity to teach students very, very early on about all of these concepts. And of course, part of who we are here is understanding that being at MIT is challenging, and that the well-being, kind of the mental well-being of our students is what's most important. And we're always ready to make sure that that's also a priority, and work closely with the MIT support services all the time to make sure that students are well supported. I'm going to go through this very quickly because there's still a lot to talk about. Just in terms of numbers, we're at any point in time, we're funding about 350 active projects. Of course, 350, we don't expect that those 350 projects will turn into startups. That's not at all our expectation, but our expectation is that all of those students will learn a lot along the way, and some of the learnings have to do with learning about the framework, the discipline, this entrepreneurship craft that Bill's talking about. But the other part is actually learning about yourself, learning about what you want to do when you grow up, what you want to do when you graduate. And this is just another way of increasing the options and the opportunities for our students. Of course, there are some incredible success stories that you can see on our website. A lot of them are intersecting with the Martin Trust Center and with VMS, and that's all wonderful. But besides these stories of the startups that emerge, there's also the stories of what the students have learned along the way. This is just one of the students. This has, as you look at what the student is talking about, he's not talking about starting a company. He's not talking about, you know, raising funds. He's really talking about his experience with the mentors and the amount that he's learned from the mentors and the support that they've given him, not only teaching material, but also connecting to the outside world, so that MIT now is not just MIT as we see it within MIT's perimeter. It becomes a much bigger world. So that's what I have to say, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and getting your questions.
Jinane, Rick Lufkin again. Let me just throw one question at you. You described so eloquently how you're giving all this money away. Where does the money come from?
That's a very important question. So the money comes from 3 different sources. And I think that was done by design. One source is a group of investors who actually pool the money into a fund, and they donate that money to MIT. So all of that money is given to MIT as a donation. And then we have a group of philanthropic donors who are primarily MIT alumni who also support the program and have supported the program from day one. And then we have a group of corporate sponsors. And so on our funding board, we have these 3 types of people whose core mission is to support the educational mission, and they all buy into it. And so those are primarily a group of really top-notch investors, a group of industry leaders, and a group of mostly successful entrepreneurs that are MIT alumni that are giving back to MIT. when we give out this money, and we give out about $1.2 million a year, which is a significant amount, we don't expect anything in return. We have a pledge that's a total voluntary pledge that if the students are successful, that they will give back and pay it forward to support others in the future. And the one company that actually had a very successful exit, the first thing that founder did is actually give me a call and said, here's some money back. And it ended up being the money that supported our internship program last summer during the pandemic, when the students, when all of their opportunities kind of dried up. And then we were able to support 20 internships. And then throughout the year, we used that same setup to support 200 internships during the pandemic, so that undergraduates were able to pair and work with other startups. So even if they were not founders, they had full experience of working with some very, very early stage ideas. So that enabled us to actually get that framework in place. So it's kind of, it works. So, but what it means from our perspective is that we're continuously making sure that we have enough money to run the program. And we have to continuously make sure to keep our alumni engaged and supporting the program moving forward.
Jinane, the mere act of creation and then continuity of this program in and of itself represents a significant entrepreneurial success story on your part. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Rick. And I have to remember and remind my team all the time that we have to go back to the entrepreneurship basics all the time.
All the time.
You use those same principles and apply them to ourselves.
Okay. Let me now pass the baton to Don Shobrys of the Venture Mentoring Service. Don, you're on.
Good afternoon. My name is Don Shobrys, and I'm a co-director of the MIT Venture Mentoring Service. I'm also only about 4 years away from having one of those wonderful red jackets. Amazing how time flies when you're having fun. So this slide shows some of the programs that support entrepreneurship at MIT. You can see at the top row, we've got Sandbox, the Venture Mentoring Service, and the Martin Trust Center. So in my talk, what I'm going to try to do is give you a high-level overview of the Venture Mentoring Service, and also try to give you a sense for how we interact with Sandbox and the Trust Center, and also many of these other programs. The Venture Mentoring Service it's an educational service for aspiring entrepreneurs, and we're supporting MIT's role as a global leader in innovation. And we teach by using real ventures. We learn by doing. We don't pick winners. Again, this is an educational service. And what we ask of our entrepreneurs is they must be committed and passionate. Their ideas must be legal and obey the laws of science, more or less. MIT students and alumni are pretty good about the last part. It's open to the Boston area MIT community. We work with students, faculty, staff, and alums, and there's no time limit on engagement. The fact that we work with alums and the fact that there's no time limit on engagement tends to differentiate us from other programs. The students we get tend to go through Sandbox. I think there's a hashtag started in Sandbox that's seen around MIT and the Trust Center. Okay. And the reason why there's no time limit on engagement is a lot of the ventures that we have are tough tech. And it could take 5 to 10 years to achieve commercialization. And we try to help those ventures stay alive as they go through that process. So we offer team mentoring by experienced entrepreneurs. We have a pool of 190 mentors drawn from the Boston business community. We have people that have started and run billion-dollar enterprises. We have investors, we have technologists, we have attorneys. And they provide practical advice for a venture's next steps. Okay, if you have a venture that's making chocolate-coated pretzels, their next steps are going to be different than someone who's trying to design next-generation nuclear reactor. And I've had the good fortune of actually working with both those types of ventures. Our goal is to create trust. All our interactions with our mentees are confidential. We have a blanket non-disclosure agreement. We also have a strict set of core principles to protect our mentees' interests. We don't want mentors that are going to try to sell professional services or look for investments, okay? It's about educating our mentors, trying to make them successful, our mentees and trying to make them successful. Our mentors are screened, trained, and monitored. Every interaction that entrepreneurs and mentors have, sorry, there's a typo there, is associated with an opportunity to provide feedback. And that continuous feedback drives a continuous improvement process. We also offer other services, including a number of seminars that are available to the entire MIT community, and office hours with experts on different areas of law, on accounting, HR, sales, marketing, social impact ventures, in our demo day. We have an outreach program that teaches other organizations how to set up similar programs, and we're also the home of I-Core at MIT, and I'll talk more about that later. And here are some numbers just to give an idea of the scale of what we've been up to. Since we started, we've worked with over 4,100 entrepreneurs, over 3,100 ventures. At any one time these days, we seem to have about 300 ventures that are actively working towards launch as operating entities. The ventures we've worked with have raised over 6.7 billion in funding. And that's a low number because the dollar amounts aren't always publicly published publicly. We've had over 370 ventures launched as operating companies. 66 ventures have had liquidity events generating more than 1.6 billion. In a given month, we'll see about 15 new ventures, and we'll have 85 mentoring sessions or office hour sessions. And our outreach program has trained 112 organizations in 23 countries worldwide. We have sister programs on every continent except Antarctica. I'm not sure we're going to be there very soon. I said I'd mention I-Core later. Now, I-Core came about because the National Science Foundation was looking at the research that they had funded and realizing that very, very, very small amount of that was being commercialized. And when they dug into it, what they discovered was that the researchers were producing things no one wanted. People were creating solutions and then looking around for problems that fit the solutions. So the I-Core program gets researchers to talk to potentially interested parties while doing research. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to find people that have problems or needs that match up with their research area. And the feedback from the researchers is that this really helps provide focus and structure to their research efforts. And also, what we hear is that generally a small change in their research efforts can have a profound impact on the likelihood of commercializing the technology. So this started at MIT in 2014 with short courses and micro grants that allowed application to a 7-week national program with a $50,000 stipend. And again, the focus of these educational efforts and the reason for the stipend is so that people can go out and talk to potential customers, try to find that sustainable interest that a company needs to be viable. Also, completing the national program dramatically increases chances of future funding. The ventures that have gone through the national program are 4 times more likely to get additional funding in the form of SBIR grants or STTR grants. Now, the connection between BMS and I-Core is that one of our I-Core staff members was instrumental in bringing it to MIT. He's the program director right now. And BMS provided instructors and still mentors the teams coming out of I-Core. MIT became the I-Core hub for all of New England in 2019 with a $4.2 million grant from the National Science Foundation. So in 2020, 22 short courses were offered to over 400 participants from 23 institutions, including that place located further down the river. We've hosted 2 national programs. We sent 25 teams to national programs. Since 2014, over 60 teams have gone to nationals, and that's primarily from MIT. 80 companies have been formed, 18 have reached commercialization, 272 jobs were created, and those companies have raised over 340 million in investments, grants, and prizes. Some details on how we operate. We're volunteer-led and self-funded. Our director and our co-directors are all volunteers, including myself. In terms of funding, we don't take money from MIT. Most of our mentors also support the program financially. We have former mentees that are supporting the programs along with friends. Our outreach program is a significant source of revenue. And our founders, Dave Stalen and Alec Dingy, created an endowment that we've been able to grow over time. We report to the provost, Marty Schmidt. Oversight comes from a board made up of the provost, the deans of the different schools, MIT's executive vice president, and the vice president for research. We meet on at least a quarterly basis with the Deshpande Center. GEL is the Gordon Engineering Leadership Program, Martin Trust Center, Sandbox, and TLO is the Technology Licensing Office. Now, we promote other programs and their events to our mentees, and these other programs reciprocate. There's a constant flow of information between these different programs. We push out a weekly email to our mentees, telling them what's coming up. We also share content with and acquire content from other programs. With I-Core, we incorporated Bill Aulet's book. Here, I'll give you a plug, Bill. There it is. And we've also made that course contact available to Sandbox. Okay. Our mentors participate in programs and competitions across campus. We have some of our mentors are involved with Sandbox. Some of our mentors are involved with the trust centers. We have new joint efforts with the Priscilla K. Gray Public Service Center. We're working with them on a series of seminars on social impact ventures. And then the Abdul Latif Jamil Water and Food Systems Lab, affectionately known as JWAFS, gives out commercialization grants each year. The teams receiving those commercialization grants are mentored by VMS. And we're also housed at the innovation headquarters with the Sandbox and other entrepreneurship programs. So I hope this is giving you a flavor of what VMS is and also a sense of how rich the MIT environment is in terms of supporting entrepreneurship. So back over to you, Rick.
Thank you, Don. I hope I'm not going to be out of place in suggesting that of the attendees on this program, perhaps they might want to consider reaching out to you to participate in the program. I say that not wanting to assault your inbox, but I think you would appreciate maybe the incredible resources that the attendees here represent.
Sure.
Okay, I'd like that concludes sort of the formal sequence of presentations. We have about 10 plus minutes left. I'd like to put all four of our panelists on the screen, and let me start with a question to you, Bill. Historically, the concept of entrepreneurship came by virtue of someone who had an incredible insight into a specific market need and a passion to address that need. And then he or she built from the ground up the entrepreneurial skill set to actually create an enterprise based on that passion for the idea. Have you not done it backwards by starting with the entrepreneurial skill set and then letting people going out to try to find the idea? And how does that mean that the ideas aren't as good? I'm sorry for saying that. Or how do you think about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Let me just say something provocative here is that the single most overrated thing in entrepreneurship is the original idea.
Okay.
And research bears that out. Was Facebook an original idea? Was Google an original idea? Was Apple's original idea? It wasn't. Was anything that Microsoft ever done original? It wasn't. What entrepreneurship is about is having a passion about solving a specific problem, as opposed to you start with who the customer is and what's the problem, and you work your way back, as opposed to I have a solution and you need my solution. And this isn't something that we invented. This is the popular term now is called design thinking. But Procter & Gamble has been doing this forever. And when you look at the research, you see that people who start you have to start with some idea, you start with some problem, you start with some opportunity, you start with some general direction. But then Matt Marks, who is a tenured professor at Cornell now, showed this research called switchback, where you go back and forth. And the original idea is not where you end up for great companies. It is just a starting point to focus on a specific customer with a team. Look, the idea is not something you can start without. You have to have some idea. But then what you do is focus on the customer, and you have to have a systematic process to move through that. And actually, the most important thing of the success pie is none of those things. It's the team itself. It's the team itself. And it's not an individual, despite what you'd see in the movies. Like the movies portray as the idea is the magical thing. It's not. It's not an individual. It's a team. You need teams. And that's what we all work so much. How do you build entrepreneurial teams that work together in a mission-driven way? Entrepreneurship, and I'll stop here in 10 seconds. Entrepreneurship is not about profiteering. It's about a mission-driven approach to solve a problem. And then does the money come? Yes. Do we use capitalism as a propulsion engine to solve that problem? Absolutely. We're unapologetic about that, but it's not about profiteering.
Thank you. Jinane?
Just to add to that, I just would like to share an example of one very early team in Sandbox, FarmWise, who's now doing incredibly well. So this is a guy, Sébastien Boyer. I don't know if you remember him, Bill.
Yeah.
French guy, came in with a strong engineering background, wanted to switch over to business, and started out at Start MIT and in the first cohort of Sandbox, wanting to use AI for managing, processing legal documents, because he had a strong engineering background. And he spent maybe 3 months in Sandbox looking at that problem, and eventually decided he didn't really know enough about law and couldn't do much. And then he went on and met with his buddy in Stanford, and they spent a month ideating, looking at, can we solve problems in healthcare? Can we solve problems in agricultural tech? And eventually they landed on solving a problem in agricultural technology, because they felt the healthcare was too crowded, and that people with their skill set was not really, the agricultural technology space was not that crowded. So they ended up actually building this amazing robot that has a computer vision, because they did what Bill said. They went and understood what the farmers were. They went to California, went to visit farms, and understood that an important problem was to figure out how to distinguish between weeds and lettuce. And they had the capabilities to actually build the computer vision algorithms to distinguish weeds from lettuce, combined it with robotics, and started weeding the weeds. And they are doing extremely well. They've raised tons of money. They have a manufacturing partner, and they're just a great story where it's exactly, I think, the opposite of coming in with a passion and a knowledge of a market, but rather with a passion for wanting to be an entrepreneur and, you know, to find a problem that's worth solving.
And that's why MIT is so important in service. We're not an investment fund. We're not an economic development agency. We create entrepreneurs, which is the fundamental premise, Don, of what VMS has been around, right? From the beginning. We create entrepreneurs. We don't create companies. Well, actually, we create companies after we create entrepreneurs. But that's the safe space that we provide. And I would say we're all damn proud of what we do. We're not saying that we shouldn't be other parts of the ecosystem, but I think MIT and we all on this call should be very proud that it is a safe space where people can do what Jinane says. And we see this every day. We see it every day. First time Mariana from BioBots came in, she was doing something completely different. And now she found a different partner working on a problem that is fundamentally helping us deal with COVID in a way that if BioBot analytics didn't exist, there would be a lot more literally deaths from it.
At yesterday's program on innovation and entrepreneurship, there was a post program in which people, were asking questions of each other. And the most common questions that were developed is, how do you build a team? And to get to your point, Bill, is that's the critical factor, is the chemistry that works behind a team. And it was clear that that was the unmet need that represents structurally, and that was expressed so many times, that the team is so important. One question from the audience. I'm not sure how relevant it is, but it's amusing. How do you violate the laws of science? The question is, presumably, if you can, the laws must be changed. And to which I would say, number one, there aren't that many laws on science. That's one of the reasons why it's science, is that most everything is a theory. It's not a law, and that's critical. And yes, if the law is violated, then we come up with a new law. That's what science is all about. And business doesn't work a lot differently in that respect. There's a lot of laws of business that have been violated and recreated as new enterprises come to fruition.
I think, Rick, I would say there are first principles in entrepreneurship. I would say there are no laws, but there are things that you can tell people not to do and they can do it. All we do is teach first principles that increase your odds of being successful. And that's what we do. It's not a science.
Yeah, the people that are successful seem to do a phenomenal job of taking advantage of the resources that are available here, yes, and then synthesizing their own path forward. And you get the sense that they actually listen, but at the same time, you see incredible creativity on their parts.
Can I just go back to the thing about teams? I think this is incredibly important, Rick, what you said. And I think it's one of the strengths here, is that if you had a team of all MBAs, it's not nearly as interesting as if you had a team of all engineers, if you had a team of all designers, if you had all the magic here is hybrid vigor. And like the center of gravity for Jinane is in the School of Engineering, but that doesn't mean she doesn't come over here and work with us. And our center of gravity, while we're not in the Sloan School, it's over there, and the Media Lab's right over there. But we're all kind of, and this is MIT. It's the tunnels, right? There's everybody. When we have a class, we have people from School of Engineering, people from Sloan, people from the design school. We even, as part of our corporate social responsibility program, we reach out to schools who don't have resources and don't know entrepreneurship, like Harvard, and allow them to participate in our programs.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was a joke, Don. That was a joke. No, it's actually not a joke. It was a joke that they don't have resources. They participate in our programs, and I think you all would agree, they provide a different dimension, a perspective that's very, very valuable.
Yeah. What's fascinating is to see the range of other institutions that are on the teams that come through. So I've worked with people from MGH, from Harvard Medical School. I mean, it's just really fascinating to see.
Yeah.
There was a question on edX classes. I believe you've answered it. I guess edX has evolved in a number of different directions since it got started, but I think you're still part of the program, and that's an important source of educational processes available.
But Rick, on that, just to be clear, all you can share on a video or a book are first principles. Yeah. You can't capture the spirit. You can't capture the apprenticeship aspects of it. And that's what we really, really focus on. Entrepreneurship is got to be taught outside the classroom. And when you look at all of us, yes, we teach a lot in the classroom, but we're connective tissue every day outside of the classroom, because it's a craft, it's apprenticeship.
I love your use of the phrase apprenticeship. It beautifully encapsulates it. And not only that, it has marvelous historical foundations as to the way you succeed in anything. There was a question about copies of slide decks available. Yes, number one, this whole program has been recorded and will be available for review on the Cardinal and Gray website. Takes a couple of weeks to get the captioning done, but it will be available. Slide decks specifically, please send me an email, and we will get you. We'll send you the slide decks that are available you've been interested in. I think we have come to the end of our hour and to the end of our questions. Did anyone have any follow-on comments they wanted to share before we turn the electronics off?
Rick, we sit on the shoulders of giants. Not only the people like Ed Roberts who come before us to do this, and you mentioned Alec Dingy. I don't see you anymore, Don, but we sit on their shoulders, and we're so grateful for it. MIT has a long legacy, and it's symbolic. It's understood and symbolized by the Cardinal and Gray Society. So thank you.
Thank you. And do remember that Ed Roberts is still very, very much active. He was a speaker just a few months ago to our organization with his latest book. So
his 86th birthday is tomorrow for all of you out there. Ed Roberts' 86th birthday is tomorrow.
Son of a gun. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for attending. As I say, this program will be on the record in a couple of weeks. And I really appreciate the Don, Jinane, and Bill, the time and effort you've put into this program, the thinking and the inspiration and the insight to the direction the Institute is going in some of these wonderful areas. As a low-key serial entrepreneur myself, I've learned even more, and that's what MIT is all about, continuous learning. So I bid you all farewell, good evening, good afternoon, and we're going to wrap it up. Bye now.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information on how to connect with the MIT Alumni Association, please visit our website.